Okay, so let us go to where we left off last week. Lesson 10. Oh, we were in this story. Okay. Just to review the story quickly. Okay, one time in this is passage 2 on page 133. One time in the past in Benares, there was a cripple, Pita Sapi, who was skilled. He had attained to mastery in the art of slinging stones. And he would sit underneath a banyan tree at the entrance to the city, throwing pebbles at the leaves of the tree. And he would be able to cut out different shaped animals from the leaves of the tree. And the village boys would say to him, "Show us the form of a hathi, an elephant. Show us the form or shape of a horse." And he would throw pebbles at the tree, knock out the leaves in order to form the shape of a horse, of an elephant. And he would do this at the request of the village boys, and in return, they would give him food and other requisites. And so that is how this crippled person, this crippled boy, was able to sustain himself. That's as far as we got, am I correct? Okay, I'm going to have to go over all of these passages from the commentarial literature because they have their own style, and unless you have models, examples to work with, it's very difficult to get familiar with the style. But once you get familiar with it, it's quite an easy flowing style, more so I think than the suttas. Okay, so now we start with At ekadivasang raja uyanang gachanto tang padesang papuni. Everybody have the place? It's section 2, right? Yeah, it's on page 133, section 2, beginning of the second paragraph. At ekadivasang. Okay, at is just atta, which means then. Ekadivasang, one day. And this is ekadivasang, it's an accusative used in the sense to indicate a particular time. Just like ekang samayang bhagava, we say on one occasion, the Blessed One. Okay, then. Okay, then one day, Raja, the Raja is the king. Uyanang gachanto. Gachanto is what part of speech? What part? Say again? Exactly. It's present participle, so he's going to Uyanang. Uyanang is Yuan. Or was it Yuan? Yuan. The park or garden. Tang padesang papuni. Papuni is the verb. What kind of verb is it? Right. It's past, or we call aorist. And it means he arrived. He arrived. Where did he arrive? That region, that place. 2, 3. Ta nega defang. Dao nega defang. Lila. Lila. Just.
You're right.
Dao nega defang.
If you want to express perfect tense, then Dao Le.
Dao Le. But this isn't perfect. This is actual past. So Dao Guo di negative Guo. Yeah. But in normal narrative in Chinese you would just use Dao. You don't use the Guo. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, so he arrived at this region. Okay, Dharaka Pita Sapping Paro Huntere Katva Palayingsu. Okay, now the Dharaka, that means the boys. Katva Paro Huntere. Yeah, it's literally, it would mean having done the cripple inside Paroha, that's the trunk of the tree. Well, you see the banyan tree, like with the downward roots, there are like big openings in between them, so almost like hollows in between. So when the king arrives, they want to have some fun with the cripple, so they push him into that hollow of the tree, and they run away, and he's stuck there, the cripple, just when the king arrives. So then the next Ranyo and Palayingsu is run away or flee. And what part of speech is this? Palayingsu? Third person, plural. And of what kind of? Of the past tense. Right. Third person, plural, past tense. Ranyo tita majantike rukamulang pavitasa chida chaya sarirang pari. This is almost becoming like a sort of Laurel and Hardy movie. Okay, Okay, now this expression from Ranyo to Pavitasa. What case is that? Genitive. And why is a genitive here? What function is this genitive fulfilling? Right, it's the genitive absolute. That means that this is, we call it a secondary clause or subordinate clause. That means it's a clause which has a subject and an action different from the subject and action, the main subject and action of the sentence. When I translate, then you'll understand what it means. In English, we would use, to indicate a genitive absolute, we would use the word while so-and-so was going on, or when such and such happened. Okay, so when the king had entered the root of the tree at the middle of the day, Tita Majantike means the middle of the day. Chita Chaya Sarirang Pari. The Chaya means shadow, and Chita is from the root chin, which means to cut. And here it would mean the holes that had been cut, the holes cut in the leaves by the cripple. Pari means touched or pervaded, and sarirang is body. So when the king entered, actually he didn't go into the root of the tree, but he entered the area around the root of the tree. At the middle of the day, probably it was very hot, so he wanted to cool off. So he goes into the shade of the tree, and while he's resting there, the holes that in the shape of the animals that have been cut in the leaves cover his body. So then, kinu ko, it should be kinu ko etanti, udang olo kento, rukasa panesu, hati rupa kadini dispa. Okay, let's take it this up to here. Okay, so is he. Then to find the matching verb for this is actually a participle, olo kento. Olo kento is, usually it's looking down, but here it's looking closely, and udang is upwards. So looking upwards, first, so kinnu ko etang. Kinnu ko, the ko is just emphatic, but kinnu, the nu indicates a question, and kin also is what, and etang is this. So he's asking himself, what is this? And the Pali, it doesn't have to give a verb. It doesn't have to say explicitly he asked himself this. But just by putting the question there, and then using the T, showing that it's a direct quotation, it implies he asked himself, what is this? Then looking upwards, then jumping to Dispa, having seen Hati Rupa Kadini. Hati Rupa Ka is the forms of elephants. Then this adi as a suffix was explained in the grammar. When you have the adi at the end of a formation, it functions like in English, etc. So having seen the forms of elephants, etc., that means there would have also been the forms of horses, cows, lao go, old dogs, xiao mao, little cats. Okay. In the leaves of the tree, panesu is leaves. In the leaves of the tree. So having seen this, kasa etang kamanti puchitva. Okay, here it kindly provides a question, or a verb for question. Again, it's a gerund. Having asked of whom or whose work, here karma has the sense of work. Whose work is this, etang? Or of whom is this the work? Following the syntax of the Pali. Of whom is this the work? Or whose work is this? Then Pita sapino ti sutva, having heard, Pita sapino, and sapino is what case? What case is that? Say it again? No. We have the nominative as sapi. It's the genitive. Because this sapi is one of those nouns ending with a long I that actually represents the ending IN. So this gives nominative singular, sapi. The nominative plural would be sapino. Sapino. But genitive is plural. But genitive singular is also sapino. And it's genitive here because the question was, whose work is this? Of whom? Kasa. And so the answer is, of the cripple. Okay, so having heard it's the work of the cripple. Tung pakosapet va, having had him called. And this is, again, it's a gerund. And note that this is an example of a kind of double causative, where one person has another person do something on his behalf. It was explained in the grammar. On pages 139 and 140. Anyway, you can read the explanation again. So now a king, you see, he has too much dignity to call the cripple himself. So he asks one of his servants, find that cripple and call him. And somehow they find the cripple inside the trunk of the tree. And, okay, now when the cripple comes to the king is going to give him a job to do. He says, okay, tung pakko sapet va aha. Aha means said. And notice here, we build up a complicated sentence, a very elaborate sentence, just by using a chain of actions connected by gerunds. One does this, one does that, one does this. So it's always using the gerund form to incorporate one clause into another to build up a complex sentence. And finally, one comes to find out what the person is speaking about when you get to the end of that long chain. Aha, the king says, speaking now to the cripple, he says, Mai hung purohita ati mukaro. Okay, purohita is the chief minister of a king. And ati mukaro means, ati, the prefix ati means excessive, mukaro is talkative. So he's extremely talkative. Not the cripple, the king's minister is too talkative. Appamatake pi vute bahung bananto mang upadavati. Appamatake means a little bit. And vute is says, is said. And what kind of formation is this? Appamatake vute? Special name for this type of formation. We've had it before.
Locative absolute?
Exactly, it's locative absolute. So the sense is when even a little bit is said, in other words, the king is saying, when I say even a little bit to him, baho bananto mang upadavati, speaking much, he's speaking much, and in effect he wears me out, or he annoys me, troubles me. I think we all know people like that. You just say a little bit like, oh, how are you today? And then they go on, oh, this, that, 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 and did you know this, that, 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 and what do you think about this, that, 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 that? Oh, I have a good one to tell you. You know this person, that, 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 that. And then they'll go on for 15, 20 minutes and you can't even get in a word. Okay. So, now the king is going to give the job to the cripple. He says, Sakisasi tasa mukhe nali mata ajalandika kipitunti. Sakisasi, are you able? Tasa mukhe, into his mouth. Nali mata, nali is a kind of measurement. I think they give here, okay, it's a cupful. A cupful of what? Ajalandike, that is goat dung. The goat dung comes out in little, like pebbles. And kipitung is to throw. So, are you able to throw a cup measure of goat dung into his mouth? And then the cripple says, Sakhi Sami Deva Ajalandika Aharapetva Purohitena Sading Tumhe Anto Sanayang Nisidata Aham Eta Kattabang Jani Samiti. So the cripple says, Sakhi Sami, I'm able. Deva. Deva means God, but it's a form of address to a king. It means like Your Majesty. Then we have this gerund, ahara petva, have brought, having had brought, or bring to me, in other words, bring to me the ajalandika, the goat's dung, and you sit down antosanayang. Antosanayang is behind a curtain. So you sit down together with the minister behind a curtain. And
Both of them said behind a curtain?
that's the sense.
I don't understand.
We're actually probably within a curtain, because this will be I think the sense maybe is that the cripple is on one side of the curtain, and these two, the king and the minister, are on the other side. But I would think that it's the cripple who is close to the curtain, whereas they might be some distance away. Because you could see that the cripple would be able to pull the curtain aside, throw the tongue into the minister's mouth, then close the curtain again.
Yeah, but what is the sudding here? Well, I know sudding goes with...
Oh, sudding is sudding means together with.
Right, but who's together with the priest?
Tumhe, you.
You.
Yeah. You is the...
You with the king's
Yeah.
head priest.
Yeah.
Sit behind the curtain. So
Yeah.
they are both sitting behind the curtain?
Right. The head, the king and the priest are on the other side of the curtain, and the cripple is hiding behind the curtain.
Is there 3 people in it?
Yeah. The cripple is the one who's going to do the mischief, and the king is talking with his minister beyond the range of the curtain. Okay, so the cripple says that, and he says, Aham eta katibang jani sami. Literally, I will know what is to be done here. But this is a way of saying, I will do the needful. I'll do what has to be done. No, he doesn't have to. But the king knows that he's an expert because of the way he can cut shapes out of the leaves.
So Janati here, Jani Sami.
Yeah.
The original form Janati here means to know or to produce?
No, this is Janati meaning to know. I will know. Yeah. Yeah. To produce is Janati. J short A N would be, in the future would be Jane Sami. Jane Sami. But this is an idiom. I will know what has to be done. In other words, that means I will do what has to be done. Okay, Raja Tata Karesi. Okay, the king did thus, did as he was instructed. Iteropi Kataria Agena Sanayang Chidang Katva. Okay, Kataria is a scissor. An Aga, it's literally the tip or point, but in the case of a scissor, it would be the edge of a scissor. Or perhaps it was some other, we call it a scissor, but they must have had some other cutting instrument similar to a scissor. So like some kind of knife for cutting cloth material. So with this scissor, the blade of a scissor, he cut a hole in the curtain. And again, this is fitted into the sentence with a gerund, having cut. Purohitasa ranya sading katain tasa. Okay, this phrase, purohitasa up to katain tasa, what case is that? Genitive and... No, it's actually genitive. Absolutely absolute. Okay, so, and again it has the sense while the minister was talking together with the king. And notice sudding takes instrumental, together with the king. Mukhe vivattamate ekang ajalandikang kipi. Okay, mate at the end of a past participle means as soon as. At least in this case, it has the meaning as soon as. Mata is literally it's only, merely. So merely is merely with the opening of his mouth. All he had to do was open his mouth. As soon as his mouth was opened, one by one, ekang, ajalandikang kipi, he threw one after another the bits of goat dung. Puro hito mukang pavitang gili.
Before you go on, may I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Karesi here is a third person singular aorist, is it correct? The Raja
Karesi, yeah.
Karesi.
Yeah.
That is a third person singular aorist.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually as a causative form.
The causative form. Right?
Made him do. Maybe it's the king made him do thus.
Well, king had things thus done.
The king thus had done. I think the sense is that the king. It's a causative form. I don't quite get what the action. What is the action that was caused to be done?
I thought it was the arrangement, and it was talking about before when he said, "Oh, maybe not."
Oh, maybe the king had this done.
Right.
In other words, he had the goat's dung brought to the right spot. Then he had the minister come and sit behind the curtain. Yeah, I think in that sense.
Right. And then itaro is next.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should have explained that. Itaro. Itaro is other.
Other.
The other. In other words, the other one. This is the cripple. Let's see, does the glossary give itaro? Yeah, the other one. The other one, really, they should have had a note on this. It's so obscure if one doesn't know this style. The itaro is the other one referring to the cripple. So the king had the instructions followed out, as explained. The other one, that is the cripple, cut the hole in the curtain with the scissor.
Okay, that makes sense. That answered my.
Okay, yeah, I overlooked that.
Because I couldn't
Yeah.
find the subject for the.
Right.
last
No, that's
word.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now as soon as the minister, while talking with the king, opened his mouth, the cripple threw one piece after another of the goat dung into his mouth. And purohito mukhang pavitang gili. Purohita is the minister. The verb gili means to swallow. It might be related to gullet, which means the food pipe.
Oh.
And pavitang is entered. But this is where the style is somewhat obscure. What is it referring to, entered? Do you know? Excuse me? Well, what has entered into the mouth, but what is it that has entered? The pieces of goat dung. And then it's repeated to show that it's the action that takes place over and over. So each time, you would say, the minister swallowed each piece of dung that entered his mouth. So this is it's a short, a very concise style. And it's a little puzzling to me why they use mukhang. I would have thought a locative would be better. Mukhe, into the mouth, or mukhasmin. I'm not clear why this. With relation to time, you can express a passage of time sometimes with accusative, sometimes with, or the location in time, with a locative or with an accusative. But in a place like this, it seems to me a locative would be better. I would actually think maybe there could even have been a copyist mistake, transmission mistake. So I would say purohito mukhe pavitang, then to fill it out, pavitang ajalandikang gili.
If that's the case, why is the first
Pavitang.
Why is it accusative? It's past participle, but in accusative form, right?
Yeah, because
So what is the verb here?
the verb is gili, swallow.
Swallow, but it cannot swallow, enter. Oh, what has entered?
It has swallowed. You see, the actual object is not mentioned, but it's just referred to, it's sort of understood. The object itself is ajalandikang, piece of goat dung. And then each piece of goat dung enters his mouth. So as each one enters, he's talking away, he just swallows it, goes on talking, another one comes, he goes on talking and he swallows it. Yeah. Yeah. That shows that it's a way of showing an action which repeats itself. Just like the kan. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Repeating,
Yeah.
Makes sense.
是不是? No, that's a different, that's a... Try it on. 试试看.
Yeah, but that's verb.
Yeah, but it's just the principle is the same. You repeat something to show an action is repeating. But that's not quite repeating, but it indicates like a short action done quickly. But in this case, it's a repeating action. Okay, pita sappi kinasu ajalandi kasu saning chalesi. Okay, pita sappi, that's the cripple. Then kinasu ajalandi kasu. What form of speech is this? Say it again. What kind of locative? Locative absolute. It means when something else had happened. And here kina means, in this case, used up, exhausted.
But if that's the case, shouldn't the I at the end of the word pita sappi be a short I to be a locative?
No, pita sappi is not locative.
Pita sappi is not locative?
No, I'm sorry. Pita sappi is the subject of the sentence. But within this, after the subject, this is sort of elegance of style, so-called elegance of style. I think it would have been clearer to non-Indian language speakers learning an Indian language if they would have put the locative absolute phrase first, then put the subject after. But this is sort of elegance of style. You put the subject first, then you put the subordinate secondary clause in between, then you complete the main clause. So the secondary clause is kinasu ajalandi kasu. Kina means used up. Ajalandi kasu means when the goat dung was used up. Why does it end with SU? Oh, of course, thank you. Yeah, feminine plural. Yeah. My mind has slipped that.
So the subject here actually is ajalandi kasu then. The goat dung. The goat dung is finished.
When the goat dung was finished, used up.
Okay, used up.
Then, okay, that's the secondary clause, the subordinate clause. When the goat dung, and it's plural, the bits of goat dung were used up. The cripple, saning chalesi, he shook the curtain. This was a signal to the king that he's run out of goat dung. Pellets, that's a good word. Yeah, pellet. Then Raja Taya Sanyaya Ajalandi Kanang Kina Bhavang Nyatva Aha. Okay, the subject here is Raja, king. Taya Sanyaya, this is instrumental. And sanya here has a sense not of perception, the usual meaning, but what causes a perception. In other words, a signal, a sign or signal. And taya means that. So by that signal, the king, having known yatva, kena bhavang. I explained last week or 2 weeks ago, bhava as a suffix gives the sense of, in English we say nis, N-E-S-S, or it can make a past participle into an abstract noun. So it's having known the finishedness, the exhaustion, the used uppedness of the pellets of goat dung. Or in normal English, having known that the pellets of goat dung were used up. Uppedness. No, I just made it up to show what the Pali would be. Exhaustedness, finishedness. So having known that the pellets of goat dung had been used up, said, he's now speaking to his minister. He says, Acharya, he addresses him as teacher. Of course, the minister would usually be a high-ranking Brahmin, so he has to be respectful. Ahang tumhehi sadding katento kattang nitaritung na sakisami. Okay, I, speaking together with you, and notice tumhehi is, what number is this? It's plural, but he's speaking with one minister. Why does he use plural? Yeah, it's a polite form. Okay, so the king says, while speaking together with you, I am not able to to reach the end of the conversation. But tumhe ati mukarataya nali mata ajalandika gilantapi tunhi bhavang na pajatati. But you, swallowing, but you, because of your excessive talkativeness, because you are so talkative, tumhi bhavang na apajata, you do not reach. Tunhi is silent, and bhavang is silentness, or in other words, silence. But you don't become silent, you don't stop talking, even though nali mata ajalandika gilantapi, even though you are swallowing a cup's measure of goat dung. Any questions about this? I should have been asking for questions.
Where does even though come from?
The though is P, gilanta P.
So apajati is second person plural.
It's the second person.
In the honorific
Yeah, it's the honorific plural.
You know, he's complaining.
Yeah.
Not very sincere.
Well, some problem that might be solved.
We didn't understand go down. What
Goat dung.
in Chinese? So I think it's solved.
Yeah.
In the dog, you say dog dung, right? You say dog dung?
I guess you could say that. Yeah.
Kata is conversation, yeah, right? Instead of a story or tale, the
Katang?
katang,
Yeah. Katang is talking.
It's just a conversation. I'm not able to finish a conversation.
Yeah. I am not able to reach the end of our talk, our discussion. I, speaking together with you, am not able to reach the end of the talk.
Reach the end is nitari.
Nitaritum, to conclude. Yeah.
Okay. The ati mukarataya.
Yeah.
What form
Oh, okay, that's a good question. What form is this?
is this? Yeah, it could be one of five.
Okay, you see the adjective ati mukara means excessively talkative. Now, what is being done here is to make it into an abstract noun by adding the suffix ta. It's also like nis or hood. There are several endings that have a similar function. Ta. Another one is, ta is feminine. Another one is t, which is neuter. This will visit. And then what we just had, bhava. This is actually a masculine. But this bhava is an independent noun, which means state or condition. But these are exclusively suffixes. So this is more common in the commentaries than in the sutta literature. You can take an adjective and make an abstract noun out of it by adding this ta or ta or bhava. And so we take the adjective ati mukara, extremely talkative, and you put ta, that means extreme talkativeness. And then this is showing that is a reason, a cause, so it becomes instrumental. Because of your extreme talkativeness, even though you swallow a whole cup of goat's dung, you don't become silent, you don't shut up. Okay, there's still another little paragraph to the end of the story. Shall we go on? Go right ahead.
Kalesi, Atisati, Indasu, Ajalandikasu, Sunni, Kalesi. That Kalesi is also ours, right? Third person singular ours.
Wait, what paragraph are you?
I'm still in the paragraph. He has read in the middle. It's for page 133.
Yeah.
The last paragraph, the third line from the bottom. The second
Oh, right.
Chales. I'm sorry, Chales. Oh,
Chales.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chales.
Yeah.
That's also ours. So the third person singular.
Yeah.
Second
It's third person. Chalesi. Chalesi. It's a causative aorist. Chalati means to move. Wait, chalati is to move. When something moves on its own, that's chalati. Okay. Chalati is like when an earthquake takes place, you say pattavi chalati, the earth moves. Then this becomes, you make a causative out of this. According to the usual procedure, you strengthen the initial vowel. Okay. So the first A becomes the long A, and then you show that the causative form is indicated by the E in the stem. Well, actually, if this were present, if it were present tense, it would be chaleti. But here we have an aorist to get or past, so it becomes chalesi. Chalesi here is he moved, he shook, in other words.
It was confusing because I thought it was second person singular and I didn't know.
Yeah, actually second person singular would be identical. Right. But you would just have to judge from the context.
And I missed the subject.
Yeah. Here it's a story about something that took place in the past, so the verb has to be a past form. Let's go on and finish the story. Top of the next page. Brahmano manku bhavang apajitva tato pataya mukang vivaritva ranya sading salapitung na saki. Again, the complex sentence made up of little parts joined by gerunds. Okay, so the Brahmin, that's the minister, is the Brahmin. Manku bhavang apajitva. Apajati is to enter upon. So, having arrived at manku bhavang, manku is like a state of being ashamed, embarrassed. So we would say in English, having become embarrassed. In Pali, again here, bhava turns manku, an adjective, into an abstract noun. The Brahmin having entered upon a state of embarrassedness or embarrassment. Tato pataya, this is one of those forms discussed on page 140. Pataya is an indeclinable postposition, which means from such and such a time onwards. There was a Chinese equivalent of that.
从今以后.
从今以后. 从
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today, right now.
That would be ajito pataya. 从今以后. 从今以后. But this is tato pataya, from then on.
从现在起. 现在.
From now on. 现在.
现在.
Nasha. From that time on. That's better, yeah. Yeah, nasha. From that time on, mukang vivaritva ranya sading salapitung nasaki. Okay, we go to the end. Nasaki is actually na plus asaki. Asaki is the past form of sakoti. Sakoti means to be able. And this forms the aorist asaki. The is just the, what do you call this? The augment, the aorist augment. So it's na plus asaki becomes nasaki. So the Brahman was not, from this time on, the Brahman was not able, having opened his mouth, mukang vivaritva, ranya sading salapitum, was not able, having opened his mouth, to converse together with the king, or more freely in more natural English, he was not able to open his mouth and converse with the king. Okay, I'll go on.
But before you go on,
yeah.
Don't you think that in this sequence of verbs, since we have open the mouth first in gerund,
yeah.
finally we have a past tense of not able to
yeah.
speak. that means he would have opened his mouth and then not able to speak with the king.
I think one could interpret it either way, actually.
Either way.
It could.
Doesn't imply the sequence of events?
It could be that from that point on, the Brahmin would open his mouth, but then he would not be able to continue to speak to the king. Or else it could be taken either way, and I can't come to a definite determination. One is right, the other is not. It could be that the na also could refer back to both vivaritva and salapitu. What do you call this tense? Narrative. They wouldn't use, the would is what we call an optative in Pali, but that wouldn't be used for narration. In some narrative writing, they use the present tense. They call it the historical present. In other words, it's the present used to describe events that took place in the past. Like even in the suttas, ekang samayang bhagava savatiyang viharati jetavane. Okay, at one time, the Blessed One, viharati, is present tense, is living, but we have to understand it as referring to the past, was living. Okay, so they would use either the historical present or the aorist, the past tense. Let me just complete it then. If there are questions, we'll discuss. Raja pita saping pako sapetva. Okay, the king, again, he doesn't lower his dignity by going to the cripple himself, but he has the cripple calls for him, and says, Tang nisaya me sukang ladanti. Nisaya means because of, on account of. Because, and here tongue is what? What does it mean? Right. And what case is it? Right, good. It's the accusative. It's the accusative you, because nisaya, when it means depending upon or because of, it refers to an accusative. So because of you, for me, may, sukang, happiness, ladang, gained, obtained. So because of you, I have found happiness. I have gained happiness. And it's ended with T. So there's no verb saying the king said this. But because it's a direct quotation, we have to understand Raja pita saping pakosapetva tang nisaya me sukang ladang vatva. Having said, then tutto tassa sabattakang nama danang datva. Tutto means glad or joyful. Huan Shi, I think. Glad, joyful. Having given to him, that's to the cripple, Danang is the wealth called Sabattakang. Seems to be a special. Oh, I see. A gift comprising 8 of everything given. I guess he'll give him like 8 suits of clothing, 8 maybe 8 elephants, 8 pieces of jewelry, 8 bars of gold, 8 bars of silver.
Yeah, we had that in Chinese.
That's concept?
Yeah, 八大样.
With 8.
I don't know what they are, but I know there's a concept.
Okay, so having given him the gift named 8 of everything, Nagarasa Chatusu Disasu Chataro Varagame Adasi. He gave him 4 Varagame, excellent villages, as kind of source of revenue. He gave him 8 choice villages in the 4 quarters, 4 parts, 4 regions of the city. So let's take the whole sentence. Okay, the king, having called the cripple, said to him, "It is because of you that I have gained happiness." And joyful, the king gave him the gift called 8 of everything, and gave him 4 excellent villages in the 4 quarters of the city.
Where does excellent come from?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's this Varagame. Game is village. Then Vara has the sense of excellent, choice.
The book says the village given as gift.
Yeah. Hereditary village. I don't quite know the sense of that. But it's like something considered excellent or choice is described as Vara. Let's say Vara Bhojana would be excellent food.
Okay, so this would be plural accusative.
This is plural accusative.
Got it wrong. 4 excellent villages.
Yeah.
In the 4 corners of the
4 quarters, 4
quarters.
yeah, 4 districts of the city.
So the villages are in the 4 quarters, or they gave also 4 quarters.
No. Because the 4 directions of this, it's a little strange having a village in a city.
The regions of the city.
It could be, I don't know, that the village lies outside the city in each quarter. It could be in those, I don't know, it's a little strange to me. One doesn't think of a city as having villages in it. No, it's not just a piece of land, but it's a village. So each, I don't know, I just can translate it literally, I would think it should say Janapadasa Chatusu. That means the country.
be considered four directions.
Yeah.
So it will be the villages in the four directions of the city.
It could be that the villages themselves are outside the city, but then it's not necessary to say Nagarasa. You would just say Chatusu Disasu. Anyway, we don't really have to answer that because our job is just to learn the Pali, not to
Right. I'm just wondering.
learn ancient Indian, what do you call this? The design, urban design.
But when we have these styles, we
Yeah.
always translate as 4 quarters.
It's really directions. Since
Sometimes corner, sometimes quarter.
not corner.
Never quarter.
No, not corner. Quarter or region or direction.
Okay.
Because sometimes you have 10 directions.
Right.
So quarter means 4. So you don't have 10 quarters. Yeah. Then you have 2.5 of a whole.
Could it be just the four relations for the relations of the four directions?
But then it would seem the word Nagarasa, city, would not be necessary.
It's in genitive, so it has to be of the
Yeah.
I see what you're
It's a bit obscure.
In the regions, obviously, the area.
Maybe. But we just can guess. It's not completely clear. Let's go on and do these verses, which are not difficult. Yeah, please. Yatagara.
Yeah, these are not difficult.
Yeah. So I would take the first line. I think it should be yata agarang dut. Because in the form it's represented here, the meter doesn't click. Yata agarang duchanang. Only 7 syllables. You need 8. So better to take it yata agarang duchanang futi samati vijati evang abhavitang chitang rago samati vijati. Okay, yata, as. Agarang means house. Duchanang. This is chana is covered. And D-U-R, means bad or poor. So when you have dur plus cha, the R gets assimilated and it becomes cha. So vuti samati vijati. Vuti is rain. Samati vijati is to penetrate. And agarang duchanang is accusative. The subject nominative is vuti and samati vijati is the verb. So as the rain penetrates a house that is badly covered, badly thatched, evang abhavitang chitang rago samati vijati. So, raga, lust, craving, penetrates abhavitang chitang, a mind that is not developed, an undeveloped, uncultivated mind. Then the next verse is just the counterpart of this. And to get the meter, 2 syllables have to be sort of pronounced quickly, joined together. Yata agarang suchanang vutina samati vijati evang subhavitang chitang rago na samati vijati. Just as the rain does not penetrate a house that is well covered, well-roofed, so lust does not penetrate a well-developed mind. Any questions about this? Completely clear to everyone? Okay, next couplet. Ida sochati, pecha sochati, papakari, ubayata sochati, so sochati, so vihanyati, disva kama kilamat, disva kama kilitamatano. 10 syllables. Okay, Ida Sochati. Here he sorrows. Pecha Sochati. Pecha means what? Do you know what kind of form that is? What form of speech? Anybody know?
Adverb?
No. It's tricky. It's difficult. In fact, on sight, it's difficult to guess. It's a gerund. I'll show you how it becomes a gerund. You know the class of beings called petas? In Sanskrit, pretas, they call them the hungry ghosts.
Oh.
Okay, it's pa, that's the prefix, plus the verbal root I. So this gives us a verb. I don't think the verb ever occurs on its own in Pali. So it's just like a theoretical type of verb. Peti, which would mean the verb I has a sense of to go, and pa is forth, to go forth, but not going forth into homelessness, but it's going on, passing on. In other words, passing on, going on to one's next life. So this forms would form an absolutive petya. It has the Y ending, Y-A. But when you have T-Y in Pali, they can't, the T-Y cannot exist, cannot remain in Pali, because it gets changed in speech into a double C. So it becomes petya. I mean, having gone forth, having passed on. Then from this you have the past participle form is peta, one who is passed on, one who has gone on to the next life. That's the past participle, but then in ordinary speech this gets turned into a noun, which means to mean a type of being who is passed away but hasn't taken rebirth in any of the other realms, but is floating around as a spirit. So, and then it's imagined that these spirits have intense hunger and thirst that they can't satisfy, so they're hungry ghosts. But normally, okay, some question? Something unclear that... Okay, so pecha means here having passed on, in other words, having gone on to the next life. one sorrows. Papakari ubayata sochati. The doer of evil has sorrows ubayata in both places. Ubayata. Ubaya means both, and this ending atta indicates place. Just like we have tatta means there, yata where, kata the question where, and sabata everywhere. So ubayata belongs to the same group of words concerning place. Here in both places. Okay, so the evildoer sorrows, is sorrowful in both places. So sochati, so vihanyati, disvakama kilitama, disvakama kilitamatano. He sorrows, so vihanyati, he is troubled, or he'll say he suffers. Having seen disva, kama kilita matano. Anybody know how to break up this kama kilita matano? Yeah. Kilitam. Excuse me? Yeah. No. That's the trick. You say? No. Yeah, and what is that to know?
Genitive or dative, actually probably dative form here, or atta, self.
It's genitive.
It's genitive.
Yeah, of oneself, of himself. In other words, his own.
His own.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
his own.
Yeah. And kilitam is defiled. It's actually, as the glossary says, it's the originally past participle of kilisati. Kilisati is the verb from which we get kilesa or klesha. Fun now, is it? Yeah, fun now. So that's defilement. And so kilitam is defiled. So having seen his own defiled action. But maybe kilitam is being used. Though it's originally a past participle, it might be used as a noun. Having seen his own defilement of action.
What kind of compound is this? This is not tapuri, so it can't be.
I think it is a kind of. It could be taken either as.
Because then it would be defiled of action.
I think, you see, because it's verse, so to fit into the meter, the words can be juggled around. So it could be kilita kama, defiled action. But then they invert the noun and the adjective. So we would say, and it could be that this past participle, kilitam, is now functioning as a noun on its own. In that case, it would be a tapurisa compound. His own defilement of action. Because in the next parallel verse we have a tapurisa. The next one is ida modati, pecha modati, katta punyo, ubayata modati, so modati, so pamodati, disva kama visuddhi matano. He rejoices here, or here he rejoices, having passed on, he rejoices. Kata punyo. This is, kata punyo means literally done merit, but here it functions as a description, an adjective describing, it's an adjective which now becomes a noun in its own right. One who has done merit, a person who has done merit. We would say the doer of merit rejoices in both places. He rejoices, pamodati, same thing, just a little stronger. I don't know English so well, so what word would you say? Rejoices, celebrates, I don't know. Enjoys, having seen kama visuddhi matano, his own, here tapurisa, purification of kama.
Why is visuddhi in accusative form? Oh, because having seen.
Having seen, yeah.
Then it is tapurisa.
Yeah, it is the tapurisa. Okay, then ida tapati, the next one, pecha tapati, papakari, ubayata tapati, papang me katanti tapati, bio tapati dukating gato. Okay, tapati, this is a passive form from tapati. Tapati is, literally it's like to burn. But here as passive it's to be burned or tormented. Yeah, tapas is the same, comes from the same root. Tapas is like spiritual, it has a sense of austere practice, which is a kind of, it's supposed to generate spiritual energy. The fire of spiritual exertion. So here he is tormented, having passed on, he is tormented. The evildoer is tormented in both places. Then thinking, papang me katang, evil has been done by me, he is tormented. Biotapati dugating gato, he is even tormented bio, even more, when he has gone to dugating, that's the bad realm of rebirth, the bad destination.
Is thinking implied?
Yeah, because it's implied by that direct quotation. In English we would have to say thinking, but Pali you can just omit that word. Because it's stating his thought directly.
The tapati, right after the quotation,
Yeah.
what is the subject?
It's still the same subject, the papakari, the evildoer.
So, thinking evil has done by me, the evildoer is tormented.
Yeah.
translate the very last part, the gato will be...
Gato is gone. Yeah. Gone. Dugating. Dugating is a bad destination. That usually means the hell realm or the realm of hungry ghosts or the animal realm. And that's accusative. Gone to that place.
He is tormented with.
Yeah. He's tormented in this life by the thought, I have done evil. And he's tormented even more when he goes to the bad rebirth. Ida, okay, the next verse is just the opposite. Ida nandati, pecha nandati, kata punyo, ubayata nandati, punyang me katanti nandati, biyo nandati, sugating gato. Okay, he rejoices, here he rejoices. Having passed on, he rejoices. The doer of merit rejoices. Well, let's use delights, since we use rejoices for modity. Here he delights. Having passed on, he delights. The doer of merit delights in both places. Punyang me katanti nandati. Thinking, merit has been done by me, he delights. Biyo nandati sugating gato. Even he delights even more when he has gone to sugating, to a happy or a good realm of rebirth. And here I should explain just dugati with two G's is the usual form, because it's dugati comes from dur. Dur is the prefix meaning bad, plus gati. And so the R turns into a G. But the prefix for good is su plus gati. So you would normally get sugati. For metrical reasons. I think must be for metrical reasons. Any questions on these verses?
Only the word biyo. Is that an indeclinable?
Yeah, it's an indeclinable, meaning even more, even more. Okay, so we...
Glossary.
I didn't go through the vocabulary yet for further reading. Okay, page 144. Ati Pandito is given as a name, but Pandito means wise. So Ati Pandito is one who is very wise. Then this Ambo. It usually occurs when somebody is addressing somebody else and says, they say, Ambo Purisa. It almost has, it's untranslatable. Trying to find where it occurs. It's not quite like hey, but it's a little bit like one person addresses another as like xiao zhang, like little zhang. It doesn't quite mean little, but it's just like a familiar address, almost like friend. So I have a friend named Bob. I say friend Bob. It just establishes some familiarity between the speaker and the person addressed. Yeah. Or I think somebody in a lower position. I want to see what water gives.
It means small?
No, it doesn't really mean small. It's just a kind of familiar way of one person addresses another. Well, water gives sir, but then he says, not very respectful, and may express surprise. So I would say friend or, hey mister, hey guy, something like that.
Mate.
Hey mate, yeah, almost like that, yeah.
I looked at the word aya. There's no mention of being a feminine.
You see, it wasn't originally a feminine. No, it wasn't specifically feminine. It was used, there was the long A, it could be feminine.
I was always told that aya was the feminine of Dante.
No, this is, in a way, this is, well, actually it is used somewhat like that. No, maybe I'm wrong. Of course, when, like, in the time of the Buddha, when lay people addressed a monk, they would say Bante, but also they would address monks as Aya, with a short A, but they would address the nun, they wouldn't use a Banta, there's no word like Banta, but they would address the nun as Aya. Then I think it was Aya Kema who yeah, she was, I think, the one to sort of adapt the word Aya and then use it as a kind of honorific title for a nun. Anyway,
I wonder the meaning of Aya, always.
You see, it's,
Aya came on so famous.
yeah, Aya, it's a dialect form of Arya, which means noble one, because in Sanskrit, you see, Sanskrit, you have Arya, actually with a long
Long A?
Arya. Okay, so one is to put this into a middle Indo-Aryan dialect.
How come here both is the A-Y-Y-A?
I'm coming to this. Okay, two ways to do it. In sort of the formal way, they insert an extra vowel. Because in the R-Y combination, it's difficult to speak. So in ordinary speech, from which Pali is based on ordinary speech, on colloquial languages, they would insert the euphonic, there's a technical word for this. Anyway, it's a euphonic vowel, I think it's called subati vowel. And so this Arya has come down in Buddhist literature as the technical term for the noble one, or a noble person. But also another way to fit Arya into speech is to assimilate the R to the Y, so then it becomes Aya. And so Aya would be used, you see, even in the Vinaya text, when people speak to monks, they sometimes refer to them as Aya. They say the Ayas have come. Yeah.
And so Bhante be masculine and feminine.
Actually, Bhante seems to be evocative, which is used only in to my knowledge, it has only a masculine form.
But the Aya applies to both sexes, right? Female.
Well, Aya with a short A would be masculine. Then to make it feminine, use a long A. Aya.
Aya is for the man.
With this,
Without the man.
without the bar.
Without bar for man.
Yeah, Aya is man. It's used for male. Aya is the feminine. But then it does seem to have been taken over as the vocative when people address a nun, a bhikkhuni, then as a respectful kind of address, then they do use Aya. Then it becomes, the vocative actually becomes Aye with an E. Aye. Okay, Aya. In fact, I'm sure that I went through this with you. Because I remember saying, from having almost no corrections to this, but saying on page 145 to take out the middle, with the two M's in the middle, to take out one M. Yeah.
That's the only thing you gave us.
Yeah, because so far the rest all seems to be all right. Yeah, Vyapata, reaches mature, comes to come of age. The same thing as to reach maturity. Okay. And now I will be away for, let's see, 3 Saturdays I'll be away. The 25th, 1st, 8th. So the next Pali class will be November 15th.
You'll be back the 15th?
I'll be back the 9th.
Oh, okay. 3 weeks. Right?
Yeah. But it's not an excuse. Try to fit. But I have to say, when you do the further readings, these passages are from commentary, this is commentarial style Pali, Rasavahini, Dhammapada commentary, Jataka commentary. So don't be discouraged if you have trouble with this style, because it takes experience to get accustomed you really need somebody to guide you into the style. So try the best you can. And then even this, I think, rather than my asking you to do these readings, I should do these the way I've done for the readings we just covered, till you get more familiar with the style. But because I'm saving you work on further readings, try to get into lesson 11.
Lesson 11 looks very long. Very long, yeah. 11 and 12 are long. Yeah, they're both very long.
Wow, it looks like, because they have the whole first sermon of the Buddha, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, at the end of chapter 12. But just try your best, then. And if you don't want to go ahead, if you're hesitant, then review what you've done. But keep it up. Otherwise, if you don't keep on working with the Pali, then it will slip away.